I hope you guys appreciate our Halloween-esque lighting and outfits. Kind of accidentally. I wasn't even thinking about it when I put this on. Yeah.
I was just like, how would my elementary school teacher dress for fall? And I was like, there'd be some kind of vest, so...
Cool.
Yeah.
No, it's working. I guess this is our official Halloween-themed video, because we're not going to do anything else. Where we talk about the scariest parts of the Mormon temple ceremony, because shit's crazy. I feel like we forget like how crazy it is that there was a point where we had a temple recommend for the Mormon temple, and we would go in and do baptisms for the dead, get married for dead people, do a 2-hour moving a sash around your shoulder ritual. There's so much. Like, how did that.
How dare you reduce
we did that.
Such a doctrinally rich right. So for those of you who don't know, the Mormon temples are primarily in use for dead people. A haunted house, if you will.
You know, your Hitlers, your Anne Franks, like all your dead people.
Spoiler alert, that's one of our things.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, so, Mormon temple. When you're 12, you can go and get baptized for dead people.
Yeah, because obviously there's lots of people who didn't get the chance to be baptized as Mormons, the one true religion here on the face of the earth. And so what else is there to do but go be baptized for and in behalf of those people who can then choose to accept it in the afterlife, in the spirit world. It's kind of weird that Mormons imagine that like missionary work is going on after death. Like it's you die, you move on to the next thing, and it's still not obvious that Mormonism is the true religion. You have to have like ghost missionaries come, and they're like, "Will you give up ghost caffeine so that you can accept this baptism?"
Your body's gonna want all your addictions in the afterlife. It's gonna be harder to give them up then.
That's what they
two
say.
Scary things while we're on baptisms of the dead, because this video is all about what's scary. Okay, Halloween themed. Two things. One, Mormons will totally baptize the shit out of like ex-Mormon family members who like would not want it, you know, like they will
yeah,
they'll baptize people who do not want to be baptized.
Yeah, I want it like explicitly stated
you gotta write
in
it
my
in your will.
Like no Mormon funeral, no Mormon baptism
Write
after
it now,
the funeral.
Tana. It sneaks up on you.
It does. You get hit by a truck, and the next thing you know, you're getting baptized.
Another scary part of the Mormon baptisms for the dead for women or girls, whatever, is that you have to wear these like full white jumpsuits, and you're not allowed to wear a bra, so you wear this like weird like kind of like cloth bra that they give you, and you don't have underwear on, so you're just wearing this white jumpsuit, and then you get like dunked a bunch of times by a priesthood leader. Did we do baptisms in the dead for the dead together in the temple? We must have. That seems like us. Cute. Anyway, then you have to get out of the water with this like white jumpsuit clinging to your body. You can see everyone's bum, and every girl like hates it and is like, oh, because you never know whether you're going to get one of the more see-through jumpsuits or one of the less. You don't really know, and you'll never know because like only the people behind will know. But it just kind of sucks because you receive all this messaging about like being modest and covering up your body, and then you're like,
and then you're in the house of God.
The house of, yeah, and it's not like you feel guilty because you know it's not your fault, but I would almost feel like, oh, I shouldn't even be worried about this because like no priesthood leader's gonna get, you know, turned on by this, which...
But maybe in Rexburg, where they have, like, the baptismal font, and you walk up the stairs, and on the other side is a glass screen, and then a whole chapel full of students just watching someone leave.
Yeah, just watching your bum emerge. Like, you might as well be naked. You're wearing a white jumpsuit.
I always packed under whites.
Wait, is that allowed? Mm-hmm. Damn. Well, yeah.
Someone gave you false information.
I feel like all the ex-Mormon women in the comments will be like, comment down below. Also, another scary thing is when you have to fucking wait for the showers and you're freezing and you're just like standing in this chilly changing room waiting for people to change.
An understated part of the Mormon temple experience is freezing, waiting for the shower.
Yeah, a lot of chilliness.
Yeah. Well, should we talk about the other scariest parts?
Yeah, because baptisms for the dead, as we said in our last video, is not the scariest part of the Mormon temple, even though it sounds pretty...
The Mormon temple, as wholesome as it sounds to get baptized for and in behalf of deceased relatives and strangers so that they can join the Mormon ghost army in the spirit world, even though that sounds really...
genealogy for 1,000 years, is it?
Yeah, even though that sounds really straightforward and nice, it's actually... a pretty dark history.
Is it?
Well, I mean, like, as far as what the temple used to be like, they've really cleaned it up.
Oh, yeah.
And honestly, for the better. Like, don't get me wrong. I
Props
think
to
those
the
things...
church's market research team, because, like, there was some scary
they did
stuff
what the prophet
happening.
could never.
Seriously. So when was it that... Well, they made a couple of changes at different points, didn't they? They made some in the 90s.
Yeah, well, it's important to note that, like... In fact, I wrote these down so that we could have them.
It's important to note that the temple ceremony is strikingly similar to Masonic ceremonies, and Joseph Smith created the temple endowment ceremony but 7 weeks, I think it was, after getting initiated into the Masons. Make of that what you will. Joseph Smith seems very cliquey, doesn't he?
So, I was going to say, it's important to note that Mormons believe that the reason Christianity failed as an endeavor and needed to be what's the word? Restored. Wow. It's because they changed the ordinances and therefore lost the authority because they changed things.
But when the church changes things in the temple, that's different.
So like they always quote Isaiah 24:5 that says, "The earth is also defiled under its inhabitants because they have transgressed the laws, changed the ordinances, broken the everlasting covenant." There's a quote from the prophet Joseph Smith. This is quoted in the August 2001 Ensign. It says, "Ordinances instituted in the heavens before the foundation of the world in the priesthood for the salvation of men are not to be altered or changed."
Okay, but here's why that means the exact opposite of what it's saying.
That's going to be every single Mormon in our comments.
Have you read this fair article?
There's this whole like backing of like, this should never change, and every subsequent prophet was like, this should not change. Brigham Young had the endowment ceremony written down. Wilford Woodruff made sure that all the presidents of all the temples were doing the exact same thing, because if it changes, you lose the authority.
So,
and other things that Mormon authority has hinged on, the stasis of the ordinances. They said that if blacks were ever given the priesthood, they would lose the priesthood.
Away, yeah.
That if they ever gave up polygamy, the church would lose its authority.
Oopsie. Anytime God said that if this happens, then you'll lose the priesthood, it happened. So what do you do with that? You just do the mental gymnastics to explain it away.
Yeah. So, again, like, I'm glad that these changes happened. They needed to happen. It's good that the church did it because it makes it less culty.
Yeah, but then don't you also feel like it's almost better if it's more overtly culty, so then the people that are kind of on the edge will like pick up on it a bit easier? I don't know. It's all relative.
Yeah. For a long time, there was no oversight, and there only was oversight when a bunch of people complained that the church was using historical records to baptize Holocaust victims. Like, it's bad enough if me, who, like, my Mormon siblings baptize me for the dead after I die. Like, it's messed up, but, like, somewhat understandable. But to, like, baptize Holocaust victims who were killed
For more on that, watch our last video on Mormons and Nazis.
Yeah.
It's like you shun them when it's happening, and then you want to baptize them afterwards. God, that's like so hot and cold.
And even more messed up is that Hitler has also been baptized
yep.
many times.
Who do you think like kicked that off? Do you think it's like a church? Do you think like some random church member did it, or do you think it's like a leader? I know
exactly who it is. His name is Gary, and he's the guy who like he's the devil's advocate, and he's like, well, everybody needs to have the opportunity to hear the gospel, and the blood of Christ is good enough even for Hitler.
Gary likes deep doctrine, but he doesn't ever get called to like a bishopric or stake president thing, because he is just like a little bit...
He's out to prove something.
Yeah, and he doesn't like fit in enough.
And does have like a low-key porn issue, so...
Yeah. Gary, if you're watching...
Stop baptizing Hitler!
Didn't you also tell me that the old temple ceremony... Well, a black man explicitly was supposed to play Satan.
Yep, that is on the list. When you go into the Mormon endowment ceremony, there's a film that you watch. It's kind of like Fantasia
it's like a shitty Planet
meets
Earth.
Genesis meets the Freemason rite. Shitty Planet Earth.
Depending on the version.
The graphics are getting better. Like, by the time I was leaving, I was like, damn.
Yeah, when
they
I
paid
saw it, I was
for
like,
this.
I
This
like
looks
these
good.
nature shots. Yeah, they got a nature
The
photographer.
CGI is really good. It looks almost real. And one of the characters in the film is Satan, and he used to be accompanied by a Protestant minister. explain to me how Adam and Eve get kicked out of the Garden of Eden and immediately get tempted by a Protestant. Shows how they're not human. They're coexisting. Neanderthals, those Protestants.
Damn.
And they also had a choir. He was accompanied by a choir, and there
Satan
used to
had
be
a choir.
a live choir in the temple that would sing some Protestant song.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, and it was explicitly mentioned that Satan had black skin. So that got removed.
Explicitly mentioned where?
In the temple ceremony, like in the script.
Wow.
So that was changed in the 70s.
The 70s? So when they lifted the priesthood ban? Okay.
Yeah. They're like, I think this is going to offend people, maybe.
Well, it's offended God more because he said if you ever change this shit, you're going to lose the whole reason that this church existed, which is the priesthood. Yeah. So
it's a tough call.
It is a tough call. I see the rock and the hard place of that one, yeah.
Another freaky thing is there used to be a vengeance oath. So as you go through the temple, you make various promises, which you were not alerted to beforehand. So,
yeah, you show up, usually, okay, and bear in mind, you usually will receive your temple endowment before you go on a mission or before you get married. Decisions that you've already decided to do those things before you get endowed. So there's like a lot riding on you, like doing the endowment. Like you don't really hear of people being like, oh, actually, I'm not going to commit to, serving this for eternity. Mm-hmm. Because there's so much, people usually have, like, their closest friends and family members there. Their literal wedding or mission is riding on it happening. And you don't find out until you show up what covenants you're supposed to make.
And they're just easy little things, so nothing you have to prepare for. You just promise that you'll never have extramarital sex and that you'll give all your time, talents, and belongings to the church.
Well, and previously you would have to do this blood oath. What was it? It was you promised to avenge the blood of Joseph Smith if you ever got the chance to.
Yeah, so that you would pray for the blood of the prophets on the United States. I have
anytime
the
you're
words
praying to curse someone, that's probably not
it's black magic.
Yeah, it's not. I much prefer the Buddhist, way of seek to cultivate a more forgiving mindset towards your enemies and understand why they did what they did, not, constantly stay in that mental victim mentality about Joseph Smith.
Cults are not about that.
Yeah, no. Cults and Buddhism, very different.
It really literally was black magic. That's interesting to think about. Like a lot of the hand signals, which again Freemasonry is associated with ritual magic, like this thing is a magic motion where you're, absorbing the power of the universe and then distributing through this hand. So this is like a very common thing that you find in there. And if you're using it for cursing, that's
oh, damn.
Interesting.
Anyone read the 4 Agreements?
I'm surprised Joseph Smith didn't plagiarize that.
They should have at the end. So very scary having to make this commitment that you didn't know really in advance what it was going to be.
Yeah, and one of them is to avenge the blood of Joseph Smith. And they took that out after... in the early 1900s, there was a Mormon senator named Reed Smoot, who we definitely need to do a video on
Reed Smoot.
Because I read through the transcripts of those hearings, and it
Reed
is
Smoot
wild.
So he was a Mormon apostle who was trialed before, is it Congress?
Yeah, he was like the senator of Utah or something.
Okay, and he was trialed by the government for polygamy related stuff, right? To find out
polygamy, a bunch of things, and one of the things they went over, kind of like when Mitt Romney went, and they were like, "Are you really equipped to?" lead the country, considering you've made these oaths to this religion.
I know, to avenge the blood of Joseph Smith.
Yeah, and so shortly following that, they adopted a good neighbor policy and took out the references to avenging the blood. They changed the words in the praise to the man that used to say, "Long shall the blood which was stained by assassins stain Illinois."
Is that not the case anymore? That's the one I've always known.
They used to say stain Illinois.
What do they now say?
Now they say... His blood which was shed by assassins, plead unto earth for...
something more palatable.
It's not so specific against that fucking state of Illinois.
Fuck Illinois in this global religion.
People are like, who are Illinois?
What the fuck is Chicago? What?
Yeah. Also, besides the vengeance oath, there was also assorted penalties. So you would promise to stay chaste, to give all your belongings to the church, and of course you'd have to swear to secrecy, that you're not allowed to reveal anything that goes down here, because if people heard about it, they'd think it was weird, and we can't have that or we'll kill you.
And I feel like the church that's another thing they've got more progressive about, because by the time I went through it was like people were saying quite a lot of stuff about what happens in the temple, but I feel like in the past it was like, don't say anything, don't even talk about it outside, you know?
Well, the penalties didn't even get removed till like 2005, which was only 3 years before I went in.
Explain what the penalties were. It's basically like if you break your covenants, like let's say you have extramarital sex.
It's like I would have my tongue torn out by its roots. I would have my
By
breast
who?
ripped open and thrown to the beasts of the field,
Like in the next
and the
life?
birds of the air. No, like in this life, I would sooner have my bowels gush open and my loins ripped out and my bowels unplugged and my liver removed and my, all the things.
Yeah, but when that was like a real covenant, were people thinking, like, what did that mean to them? Like, because in like the 90s, no one was going to come and rip their tongue out, right? I could imagine in Brigham Young's day that someone could like transgress against the church and they would rip out his tongue or kill him, Like, I feel like those penalties were probably a lot more literal early on in the church, like Danites. Blah, blah, blah.
The wording went from being like, if I do this, this will happen to me, to being like, I would rather this happen to me than say what went on, but don't do it.
Okay.
Just.
So by the time people were doing it, like,
but still, like, very disturbing.
Very disturbing. A bit unnecessary.
And you would like pantomime the cutting of your throat and all that stuff. A lot of the fundamentalist murders that have happened have been carried out kind of on that principle.
Of course they have.
Because the fundamentalists, what the mainstream church why they have failed to squelch fundamentalism is because the fundamentalists are usually right. Like, they're quoting the original people who are like, if this ever changes, you can guarantee that the mainstream has gone wrong. And so they're like, fuck it, we're going to stay how it is. And that's one of the teachings. And, like, they kill people over it. And it's important to remember that, like, those teachings still have consequences, even if the LDS church, like, itself can
tries
like pretend
it's
still part of like the Mormon story.
Because there are people that are like, well, the modern LDS leaders, they don't know what they're talking about. It's like, this
which is
stuff
true.
still exists. Yeah, which is true.
But yeah, for different reasons, I guess.
Yeah, all it takes is like, the right neurological wiring for someone to read this stuff from Brigham Young and be like, yes, I should go kill this person because of this. It's like, you almost can't blame them.
Yeah. So the last thing that I thought was really scary about the Mormon temple experience, again, like, this is up until like 2005. Actually, I think they took the oaths out in the 90s, the penalties, and then took this part out only in 2005.
The nakedness?
Which is
ritual 2005.
Nudity. Prior to going through the endowment ceremony, you're initiated, which you're like washed and clothed and anointed prior to receiving the greater ordinances, which will allow you to get into heaven. Teach all the secret handshakes, all the little knocks and little names so you can get in.
Long story short, there's basically just like a section at the beginning where you're wearing a different outfit.
Well, so until 2005, you would literally just have like a sheet draped over you with like a poncho, just a whole kind of middle
body.
Over your naked body, and an elderly person would bless your head, your breasts, your stomach, your spine, your bowels, and your loins, and would literally
has to touch
you on every single part.
And also, didn't it, because, well, when I did it, obviously it wasn't quite naked anymore, even though you still are like pretty exposed.
You're in your underwear.
Yeah, you are. But wasn't it, well, you have the poncho over. So yeah, it's fine when it's like, I felt fine because I was just like some old lady, I have like underwear and a poncho on. So it's fine. But didn't it also used to be that they wouldn't, for example, women would be initiated by men, wouldn't they, in like Joseph Smith's time?
I don't remember.
I feel like I've read that.
It would not surprise me one bit.
Yeah, it totally seems like a way that predators...
That seems like exactly what it was set up for.
Yeah, so many opportunities for
they used to...
behavior.
I mean, this is an example of the ordinances being changed. Kind of like how... we may have said this in our last temple video, but like Mormons, again, use the example of the Catholic Church being in apostasy because they changed the ordinances of baptism because they only sprinkle the water. And they used to, in the temple, like draw a full-on bath and would straight up like wash you in the bathtub.
And now they just sprinkle water.
And now they literally just sprinkle water on you. But it like that's totally disturbing that like some stranger would touch you. And even now it's still like kind of creepy. Like,
Yeah.
you're in your underwear with some person who's talking to you in this very
Well, we haven't
serious
even talked
whisper.
about how, like, if it's the first time gone through, you've just been given your special Mormon underwear for the first time.
Yeah.
Which you aren't allowed to try on in advance. You don't really know what it's going to be
No,
like.
literally take it out of the package that you buy at the special Mormon underwear store.
Well, that's another scary thing about the temple is Mormon underwear. Just a very culty concept, right? And, like, back in the old days, it would be a full body, like, thing, wouldn't it?
Wrists,
Now they've, like, made
ankles.
it kind of, like, cute white spandex almost. I mean, it's not,
There's
like,
lace
cute.
on the fringe.
But yeah, just for those who have never been Mormon, Mormons have to wear, like, a little shirt and spandex shorts all the time under everything.
That's usually, like, the one
For
thing
spiritual
Mormons
protection.
people know about Mormons anyway.
Yeah, maybe.
That's the one I always heard.
I didn't know till I'd been baptized for, like, a year. But
And then they just pounced that one little, sprung that out there.
yeah, they just, like, sprinkle that.
Here you go. Little tidbit about our faith.
Fun fact. It's super small. But yeah, so say goodbye to cute underwear.
Yeah, so now they don't touch you in all the places. They just give you a little blessing. You're still, like, in an enclosed room with somebody, and kind of weird. Again, no advance warning about what's going to happen. You get up, you get into the temple. The women have to veil their faces during the prayers.
Oh yeah, because John was sexist in the Bible. Is that why?
Do they not do that
Paul,
anymore?
John?
Did they just change that?
They did in the last couple of years make some like more feminist changes, didn't they? And that might have...
Now Eve like covenants directly with God instead of being like, I covenant with my husband to do everything he says just as he does
when
what
I went
God
through
says.
the temple, I had to covenant to do everything my husband says. I would obey my husband would obey God, right? And also I had to cover my face during the prayer because I'm a woman and women shouldn't.
So if they change the ordinances, are you still bound by the old ones? Like,
who's to say?
Is it grandfathered in?
They're not telling anyone anything, are they?
It's totally like the memory hole principle. It's like if you
Yeah,
just keep making small enough changes,
seriously.
it's not enough to like really trigger someone's like, whoa, what the fuck?
Oh god, it's so obvious though. Come on.
And then in 100 years they can be like, well, look, there was things all along. Like,
Also, what about people that like made a specific covenant? Like, let's say they did like the death penalty, and then like really like agonized over that for ages, and then suddenly they're like, that's not real. Like, do you just like erase it from your own like view of what your covenants are?
turn it off.
Yeah, a lot of people, again, for the reasons we've already talked about, but like they'll go to do the temple ceremony for the first time, and be really freaked out, and then because they're really freaked out,
see all your friends and family members with their hands doing these things.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot they also... Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No.
But they used to also say words that were apparently written in the Adamic language, like the
Oh
original
my
language of Adam.
God.
So you used to have all these people, Paleo.
What was that thing where
Like
someone
literally
asked...
something just Joseph Smith just made up.
There was like a thing where someone asked Joseph Smith, like, what is the name of this? What is the name of this? It just sounded like a dumb 4-year-old child making up what the word would
Yeah, he's
be.
like, what is the word for angel? And he's like, Anglesman.
But then, like,
Anglesman, yeah?
It's so stupid. But anyway, yeah, so I think that's like a really classic cult thing, isn't it? That you do something really shocking and then it makes you double down in it because you feel so freaked out, and that cognitive dissonance just makes you, double down in the cult even harder.
And it's not to say like...
So it's a useful indoctrination tool to have a really scary temple ceremony.
Yeah, absolutely.
Depending on the person, but...
eventually, a lot of people, it gets put on the shelf and becomes kind of weighty.
yeah,
and it cracks,
especially
but...
these days, just because I feel like there's more conversation, but people are less weird.
Yeah. I do want to like distinguish between like healthy cultural rituals, coming of age ceremonies and rites. There's a big difference. Like those can be really powerful things and like help a person transition into adulthood. And I think that there's a place for them in our society.
Yeah, like give your 19-year-olds mushrooms.
yeah, totally.
Like an Aldous Huxley Island situation is what I'm thinking of.
Vision Quest kind of deal.
Voluntary.
Yeah, but that's the thing is like totally voluntary, and they have to know what's coming beforehand. You can't just like spring this oath of secrecy and all these like high commitment covenants on someone without any warning. That's totally inappropriate and the hallmark of a cult.
Yeah, a big criticism or like sort of comeback that we'll get from Mormons is like, well, no one's forcing you to do these things. And I just feel like there's not that awareness of how okay, so let's say even now in 2020, there is massive cultural, social pressure to do these things. So saying like no one has to, it's like, yeah, but like you can't remove the social pressure. You can't remove those factors. Like those play into everyone's decisions.
You can choose to disobey God. You're just going to spend eternity burning in hell in total isolation and misery if you don't.
Well, here's another thing, though. It's like everything that Mormons will justify now because they've received the way more watered down version of it. You know, go back. Has that only been like a couple hundred years since the church was founded? It's
200.
just amazing how young it is. But go back 200 years and it's like, this is your entire tribe. Like, if you don't accept this, you get kicked out of the tribe and you don't know what the fuck's going to happen to you. Like, there wasn't space in, I don't know, Illinois or wherever they, like, set up Mormon camps. Sorry, I'm so shit at Mormon history. But there wasn't, like, space for people who, like, yeah, she had a hard time with the temple. She's not going to do it today. It's like, you do it. Like, there weren't unbelievers among, and if they were, they stayed quiet because, like, they literally could get killed by the Danites, right? / just major ostracization that, you know, like, could affect their lives. Like, as in, they could die from it. Do you know what I'm saying? It's just like this, it's so easy for, you know, like, the average Mormon now who, like, lives in Orem, Utah to be like, well, no one's making you do it. And it's like, yeah, but now imagine that you, like, live in this Mormon commune among Brigham Young and all the saints and, like, there was, it wasn't a choice. There literally wasn't a choice. There was no other option unless you're gonna, like, if you're some, like, you know, 17-year-old girl, what do? You just, like, leave your tribe with no resources, no anything in it. You know, there's nowhere to go. There's nothing else you can do.
Yeah.
You have to do it. So, I don't know.
Yeah,
Everything...
The psychosocial programming is so deep that it's basically like...
Yeah.
Like telling an 8-year-old they have the ability to choose baptism.
When
it's
they
like,
can't even do abstract concepts yet.
Yeah, of course they don't, like... They're not choosing...
Yeah.
Did that thing go off or am I imagining?
No, we're good.
And in the same way, like... Yeah, they're like, well, you shouldn't have gone on a mission if you were going to have such a bad attitude about it. And it's like, at the time, I had a really good attitude. I had the best attitude about it.
You would have loved him.
Yeah, but it's only because I, like, had no other option than that. I didn't know anything. I wasn't given all the information up front. So it wasn't until years later of processing and realizing, like, holy cow, like, I was unprepared for that. That was wrong. Like, I was taken advantage of in so many different ways. And...
Yeah, and you don't really have a choice when your brain, even in 2020, when your brain has been conditioned your entire life to see this as the only way, the one true way. It's like if you've never even really been given the space in your brain to consider a different path or another option, like our choices are so limited by what we can even consider options, right? And so you didn't consider not going on a mission. It was like you wanted to go on a mission since you were like 3.
Yeah,
that was how they made you. They made you sing songs when you were 3 about I hope they call me on a mission one day. Like any understanding of how the brain works, like, just makes it so obvious that you don't have a choice.
Yeah.
And whatever.
And when they give you the choice in the temple, they're like, if you're not ready to make these covenants, you can now leave. And there's like a moment of silence. I've heard of people getting up and leaving. Yeah, I was going to ask. But I'm like, you must have been like way further along than me because I like never, ever would have considered it. Just
even if like I would have just,
Even if they like strip me naked and beat me to death here, I'll do it.
Oh, God. Yeah. If anyone has any stories about people actually standing up and like walking out, please let us know in the comments because we'd love to read them. But yeah, the Mormon temple ceremony, pretty scary.
Yeah. Check out New Name Noah's YouTube videos if you want to see how it goes down. It's a little scary, a little boring.
Little scary, a little boring.
Well, if you're looking for a haunted locale to haunt this Halloween, there are many legends about the temples being inhabited by dead spirits. So,
I wish.
Including those of George Washington and the other founding fathers showed up at the temple and asked Wilford Woodruff to be baptized for them, even though they had already been baptized previously. Like,
so cute,
so funny.
Also, this is just an aside, but like, you know how Warren Jeffs, they had a recording of him like essentially molesting a girl in the temple ceremony. Like, I don't believe that that's only happened in the FLDS church, you know? So it's just, I mean, when you get a bunch of church leaders who have like full permission to marry, like, you know, teenage girls,
And they all were, the older they got,
yeah, it felt like the older they got, the younger they would go, which is a weird phenomenon. And also, yeah, so, you know, that's just a thing that is horrifying to think about, because the potential is there. Like, the temple is such a, like, intense situation. Yeah, just the potential for abuse is, like, rampant. And there's no way it hasn't happened among, like, at the hands of Mormon prophets or apostles or high up people, you know.
Yeah.
Because also, I mean, like, the men are the priesthood leaders. That's another part of it, is like, and the whole thing with the temple is like, obey, make covenants, do what you're told. We're not going to tell you in advance, but you better show up ready to do whatever it is we tell you to do.
No, it's very much like abuser,
yeah,
like dynamics.
Yeah. Has anyone watched The Devil All the Time on Netflix? Have you watched that yet? Oh, it's so good. Yeah, there's stuff in that just reminds me of that. Well.
Oof. Heavy.
Yeah.
I that's one, like, I try not to think about too much because I'm like, oh, I don't, like,
yeah,
I'm sure that's scary.
Generally, like, secret rituals are like a lot of potential for bad stuff to go on there, you know.
It's not secret, it's sacred.
It's like, yeah, like you said, the abuser dynamic, it's like the secrecy is already built in. Like, you could not have okay, yeah, we got to be done talking about this because I feel like we've said enough. But yeah, that's the Mormon temple. We'd love to know about your experiences, if you've gone through it, or maybe you dodged the bullet and didn't. If you've got any scary stories, feel free to share.
And say hello in the comments.
We are going to be going over to Patreon now for a palate cleanser. We're going to be filming our second Truth or Drink, because we have a bunch of questions that our patrons asked us. So Tanner's going to have to drink alcohol, which he hates. And thank you to our patrons for making quality content such as this possible.
Trademark phrase. Love you.
That would be a funny t-shirt design. No one would buy it. Just nobody.
Watch, we'll put it up on the store.
Truly no one.
I guarantee you, someone watching this video is like, where can I buy that shirt?
I'm like, hell yeah, that's me. I make quality content. I'm embarrassed for you. Okay.
Okay, bye.
Bye.